Okay, gang, welcome back. Last time we were talking to each other, we were learning about the hardware, which was called the Arduino Uno. And now, in order to work with that Arduino and code it, we're going to have to learn a little bit about the software. And in order to work with it, you're going to have to open up the Arduino IDE, which stands for the Integrated Development Environment. All right, it's already preloaded on your MacBooks. There's also a web-based cloud version of it that I might show you how to sign up for in a later tutorial. But for now, let's go over to our Spotlight, and we are going to start typing in Arduino, and you'll see that it pops up. This is the IDE. At this point, you're just going to want to hit Enter. Okay, you'll see it appear up here in the top left of your screen. And in order to open up what's called a sketch is what we call Arduino files. You're going to simply hit File and New. Okay, and something very similar to what I've got open up on the right side of the screen will pop open for you. Now, there's a bunch of things we're going to learn about it, and right now it looks completely foreign. Don't worry, that'll change by the time we're done discussing this. But in order to, I guess, interface with the software, the first thing we're going to have to do is plug in our Arduino board. So you're going to make sure that you've got the USB cable plugged into the proper port, okay? And you'll take the USB end of it now, and you'll hook it up to your Mac, and you should see a quick flash of the light that tells you the computer and the Arduino are talking to one another. And you are now selected to start interfacing with this thing. You should also notice that your green on button has turned on because the USB also supplies power to the Arduino. And now the first thing we have to do is make sure that the IDE can see the board that you are working with. So we are going to go over to Tools, and we are going to scroll down until we see Board. Now there are many different types of Arduinos, and the Arduino you are using is an Arduino Uno. So go ahead and select that. You're also going to have to tell the IDE where your Arduino is plugged in. So we're going to scroll down to Port, and most of the time it should be the last choice on the bottom. For me, if you're plugged in on the right side of your MacBook, it should be USB modem 1411, and you can just select that. If you happen to have plugged in on the left side, it may say 1421. Just make sure you've selected it. I found it's a little less buggy if we stick to the right side. Okay, so now we've got that part of it set up. Our IDE can see the Arduino board, and there's a couple things we might want to do just to make this look a little bit nicer for us. So we're going to come over to File, and we're going to go to Arduino, and we're going to select Preferences. And there's a few things that we're going to want to notice. First of all, this is going to tell me where my sketches are going to be saved when it comes time to do so. So you'll see that it's under your username, I'm teacher, you'll have your student ID number. It'll be under Documents and in the Arduino folder. Okay, and there's a few things that I want you to make sure are selected here. Number one at the top is display the line numbers. It's going to be a lot easier to navigate through your code if you could see which numbered line you're working with. You're going to want to verify your code after you upload it. That means simply that you want the debugger in the IDE to take a look at your sketch to make sure that it works before sending it over to your Arduino. That should make a lot more sense. And then it's also going to be advantageous to have save when verifying or uploading, which means that anytime you ask the IDE to check your code or to send your code over to the Arduino board, it automatically saves, which is nice so you don't have to manually do that. I also like to take the font size and bump it up to about 18. You don't have to, but my eyes are getting old and it helps me a little bit when I'm looking at it. Hence my eyeglasses. Had I been doing this tutorial last year, I wouldn't be wearing them, but such is life. We'll live with it and move on. So let's click OK. And now you should be in a good spot to sort of start working in the IDE. Okay, so let's see, what is all this stuff about? Well, first of all, right here it says sketch, and then for you, it'll have the date that you've opened the sketch. That's kind of the default way that the IDE just gives files a name. So let's go ahead and give it a different name. Okay, so we can do that by clicking this down arrow, and we're going to click Rename. And it's going to ask how about saving the sketch first before trying to rename it. I think that's a little cheeky, but we'll say, okay, Arduino, let's go ahead and do that. So we'll hit File, and we'll hit Save As, and we'll give it a name. Now, when you're naming your files, it's important that you don't put any spaces if it's going to have multiple words in its name. So we'll call this My sweet sketch. Okay, and notice that in between the empty spaces, I've put an underscore, and you'll see there's that Arduino folder and a bunch of other files or sketches that I've already written. At this point now, we'll hit save. Okay, and you'll notice that it changed the name of the file to what we just called it. If you ever want to rename it, just because sometimes you want it to be a bit more descriptive of what you've done, we can hit rename. And instead of my sweet sketch for you, why don't we call it my first sketch? Okay, now, it's going to be a little bit difficult in order to sort of see what these codes mean right now. So you're going to have to kind of take me at my word and understand that these will get easier as we go on. Okay, so let's say we want to go ahead and type in these things, or let's go ahead and just use an example for now. How about that? We'll go to File, and if we go to Examples, under Basics, you should see that there is a Blink sketch. If we click that, it should open a brand new sketch for us called Blink. Okay, it's a little bit different than the one we've just been working with. All right, it opened up over the top of the one I was just working, but I want you to be able to see a couple of things when you're working in the IDE. So the Blink sketch is going to do nothing more than take that onboard LED that I showed you in the first video and just blink it on and off at a 1 second interval. Right now we don't care about any of the language that you see in front of you. I just want you to see a sketch having opened. You'll see its file name. And now what we're going to do is take a look at some of the other buttons in the IDE and see what their job is. First of all, you're going to have this check mark. That's your verify button. I like to click that every couple of lines just to make sure that nothing I've done has had an error in it. I don't like to wait till the very end because then there could be a whole bunch of what's called debugging or error solving that has to go on. And let's just click verify for ourselves, and you'll see a status bar come up, and it will say done compiling. Compiling basically means it's converted your language into machine language and that you guys have communicated well and all is good. It's going to give you a size of the sketch. Most of those numbers really aren't going to mean a whole lot to us at this point. Okay, so let's say now we wanted to take this sketch and send it over to the Arduino board. Well, that is going to involve using the upload button, which is the arrow that points over to the right. When we click that, you should keep an eye on your TX and RX LEDs. Remember we said that those should blink when our computer and board are communicating with each other. So let's go ahead and give this command over to the board and see that LED that's connected to pin 13 start doing its thing, which should be blinking. Okay, so we got the TX RX, and now we've got a blink sketch running on our Arduino. The LED should be going on and off every second, and you've just run your first sketch. Now you didn't type it, but I think it's interesting in order to just get a feel for how this IDE works. Okay, there's a couple of other pieces just to take a look at here while we have this open. First of all, down here in the bottom left corner, you're going to see a number. That is essentially just where your cursor is currently. Our cursor is on line number 1, so it has a number 1. If we moved it to line number 6, it would go to line number 6. In the bottom right here, we're also going to see that it confirms for us which type of Arduino we're using and what port we are attached to in case we ever need to refer to that. And that's actually going to be really helpful once I start showing you how to interface these things with a Raspberry Pi or another computer. Okay. One last thing before we go today, we're going to take a look up here, and this is going to be a really important tool for us. It's called our serial monitor. The serial monitor essentially just gives us a window into what's going in between the computer and the board through that serial port. And if we click it open right now, you're going to see there's nothing because this sketch that we're running doesn't really have anything that needs to be shown. But if we happen to be reading sensor data, or if we're trying to take input from a user of our sketch, a lot of times we are going to work with those two things in the serial monitor. Okay, so last but not least are just the 3 major parts of your IDE. So right up here, this is going to be called our editor. In that window is where you're going to type your code, fix your code, comment on your code, and that's all stuff we'll talk about later on. Right over here is going to be our message bar, and basically it kind of tells us the status of what we had just done. So here it says we are done uploading because we just sent the sketch over to the Arduino. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we've got what's called our console. And for now, everything went well. If we happen to make a mistake when we are typing our sketch, the console is where it's going to tell us that. So what I'm going to do is just modify this really quickly, and I'm going to eliminate that semicolon. We'll find that a semicolon is kind of like a period when you're writing sentences in English class. So what I just did was I modified the sketch a little bit by getting rid of it, and that's going to cause an error. That thing needed to be there. Okay, so now when I hit verify, it's going to say, uh-oh, I expected to see a semicolon before this next symbol right here. This is going to take some time to really learn how to use, but once you learn how to debug by seeing the error messages in your console, that's going to make coding a lot easier for you. Okay. I also want to point out that you get these sort of interwoven S-looking symbols next to your file name. Anytime you've made a change to your code, it's going to say, hey, you have not saved it yet with those little double S's. So what we're going to do is go back. We're going to put our semicolon in again, and we're going to recompile our sketch, and it's going to say, hey, all is good. Okay, and then all we could do is go up here and say File, Save, and we should be good to go. So this is a read-only file, so it's not going to let us do that. We'll cancel out for now, but when you are working with your own personal files, after you've saved, those double S's will disappear. So that's the Arduino IDE. We're going to learn lots more of what to do coming up. And remember, keep calm and keep coding. Later, guys.